She never expected that a single desperate gamble would change her life forever. But when a struggling single mom named Maya Delac spent her last $500 on a condemned, flood-rotted farmhouse, she wasn't chasing a dream. She was running from a disaster. Everyone told her she'd thrown her life away. Everyone said the place was worthless. But the moment she stepped inside, amid the darkness, the mold, and the rushing stormwater, something whispered beneath the broken floorboards. Something hidden, something powerful, and by the time she found the truth underneath that house, it was already too late. After the moment she clicked place bid, Maya Delac felt the world tilt beneath her like she'd just stepped off a cliff she couldn't climb back up. The email confirmation glowed on a cracked phone screen. Cold, official, irreversible, winning bid $500, rural county lot #47, title transfer pending. It didn't congratulate her, it warned her. And in the stillness of her tiny apartment, the weight of what she'd done settled into her bones like a second, heavier heartbeat. The morning light, leaking through the blinds, made everything look harsher. The peeling paint on the walls, the stack of overdue bills on the counter, the school permission slip she couldn't afford to sign. Her daughter slept quietly in the next room, unaware that her mother had just risked everything on a property described by the county as unsalvageable. But Maya wasn't sure if she'd made a mistake, or if she'd simply run out of safer choices. She stood in the silence, rubbing her thumb against the worn strap of her thrift store bag, telling herself she'd find a way to make this insane decision make sense. The farmhouse could be fixed. The flood damage couldn't be that bad. Maybe, just maybe, this was the miracle disguised as madness she had been waiting for. But even as she tried to steady her breath, a faint tremor lingered beneath her ribs, a whisper of fear she couldn't shake. When she stepped outside, the sky was already shifting. Storm clouds curled over the horizon, rolling in like a warning. The old bus growled as it carried her past rows of farmland, abandoned barns, and forgotten stretches of county roads washed pale by years of neglect. The farther she traveled, the more the world around her thinned. Less traffic, fewer houses, just open land and the slow rumble of thunder building in the distance. She pressed her forehead gently to the window, watching raindrops begin to dot the glass. Every mile they covered dragged her deeper into a decision she never planned to make. Her pulse kept time with the wheels hitting potholes, steady, anxious, certain only of the forward momentum dragging her toward a future she couldn't predict. By the time the bus hissed to a stop near the county line, the air smelled of wet earth and electricity. Maya stepped off, gripping her bag tighter, her shoes sinking slightly into the soft ground. In the distance stood the farmhouse she now legally owned, her reckless miracle, her $500 gamble, leaning against the darkening sky like a wounded animal waiting for someone brave enough or foolish enough to approach. With every hesitant step down the long dirt path, she took in the sagging porch, the boarded windows, and the water stains crawling up the exterior walls like old scars. The wind pushed fragments of brittle leaves across the yard, and somewhere inside the house a shutter slammed hard enough to echo. Maya swallowed. This was hers, all of it. The ruin, the risk, the unknown waiting in the shadows. A cold drop of rain hit her cheek, then another, then a steady drizzle. The storm wasn't coming. It was already here. She pulled her coat tighter and approached the front steps, feeling her heartbeat thrum louder with each step. The key the county had mailed her was small, rusted, almost reluctant to be touched. She slid it into the lock, forced it to turn, and felt the heavy door groan open against years of swollen wood. A rush of damp, stale air washed over her as she stepped inside. The floorboards creaked beneath her weight. The dim interior smelled of flooded earth, mold, and something older, something buried deep within the bones of the house. Water dripped from the ceiling into shallow puddles scattered across the warped wooden floor. The storm outside growled, rattling the windows like an impatient guest demanding to be let in. And yet, in the stillness between thunderclaps, Maya felt something else, a quiet pull, a faint whisper of possibility. She stared deeper into the dark hallway stretching before her, the shadows shifting like they were watching her back. The farmhouse was ruined, broken, forgotten by time, but as she crossed the threshold, she felt an odd certainty settle into her chest. This place wasn't empty, not truly. Something waited here, something hidden beneath the damage, beneath the silence, beneath the despair that once lived within these walls, and Maya Delacroix had just walked straight into its story. As the wind rattled the porch behind her, she realized the storm was no longer a threat forcing her inside. It was a curtain falling on the life she had known. Ahead of her, the house breathed quietly, as if waking from a long sleep. And Maya stepped deeper into the darkness, unaware that her first footsteps inside were setting off a chain of events that would change everything. The deeper Maya stepped into the ruined farmhouse, the more the darkness seemed to watch her, shifting with every movement she made. Her footsteps echoed softly, swallowed by the damp air. The storm outside tightened its grip on the old structure, shaking loose droplets of rain from the ceiling, as though the house itself were exhaling after years of holding its breath. The hallway narrowed, lined with walls blistered from floodwater, their paint peeling in long, curling strips that reminded her of abandoned pages torn from a forgotten story. She brushed her fingertips along them, feeling the soft crumble of paint disintegrate beneath her touch. Somehow, even in decay, there was the faintest trace of craftsmanship, intricate moldings along the corners, carved patterns nearly eaten away by time, but still whispering of hands that once cared deeply for this place. She turned into what had once been a living room. Mud stained the warped floorboards, pooling in sunken pockets near the corners. The remnants of a ruined sofa slumped like a drowned animal, cushions torn open, stuffing spilling out like pale breath. Yet even in ruin, the room carried a strange dignity. The way the ceiling beams curved overhead, the symmetry of the old hearth, the faint outline of wallpaper that once must have been chosen with love. It all felt too deliberate, too meaningful, for a home sold for $500. A sudden crack of thunder split the air, vibrating through the walls. The lights, what little electricity the house still offered, flickered once, then surrendered to the storm, plunging everything into deeper shadow. Maya's breath caught. She reached instinctively for her phone, using its faint glow to guide her steps. The beam of light cut across the room, catching something glinting faintly near the far wall. She approached slowly. Beneath a collapsed bookshelf and several planks of warped wood lay a small, metallic latch. Out of place, unmistakably deliberate, she crouched, her heart tightening as she brushed mud and debris aside. The latch was attached to a narrow wooden hatch, its edges reinforced with metal brackets that looked far too modern for the age of the farmhouse. Maya swallowed hard. Why would a flooded, condemned house have a hidden hatch beneath its living room floor? She tugged gently, but the hatch didn't budge. Waterlogged wood resisted her, swollen thick and stubborn from months of flooding. She tried again, bracing one knee against the floor, pulling with all her strength. Nothing, only a dull groan from the metal brackets. A whisper of unease slid down her spine. She stood, breathing heavily, her pulse hammering in her ears. The storm outside intensified, rain slashing against the windows in sideways sheets. The wind wailed through cracks in the walls, pushing cold air across her skin like invisible fingers, urging her back toward the door. But Maya didn't leave. Instead, she lifted her phone higher, sweeping its weak light across the room again. she noticed something she had missed before. The flooring around the hatch was different. The boards were thicker, reinforced beneath the surface. Not broken like the others, not warped the same way, almost strengthened, as if the hatch, and whatever lay below, had been designed to withstand something greater than a simple flood. The thought lodged in her chest like a thorn. Who had built this, and why? Her breath hitched as she heard a faint drip echo beneath her feet. Not from above, but below, beneath the hatch, as if something stirred in the spaces beneath the house. For a moment she backed away, pressing her shoulders against the wall. Fear curled through her, subtle yet undeniable. She had come here expecting rot, damage, maybe a length of costly repairs. But this hidden secret built into the bones of the farmhouse, felt like stepping into a story she hadn't agreed to be a part of. Lightning struck nearby, illuminating the house in a flash of cold, blue-white light. The entire structure shuddered, dust falling from the ceiling like the house was shaking itself awake. Maya's heartbeat steadied, not with calm, but with resolve. She wiped her damp palms against her jeans and stepped back toward the hatch. The storm outside raged, but something inside her quieted, narrowing into a sharp point of certainty. If this house held secrets, she needed to know them. Not tomorrow, not after repairs, not someday when life felt easier. Now, a new surge of determination rose through her. She scanned the room for something, anything, that could help pry the hatch open. Her eyes landed on a rusted fire poker near the old hearth, half buried beneath fallen debris. She retrieved it, feeling its weight settle into her hand. She wedged the curved tip beneath the edge of the hatch, pushing with her full strength. Wood groaned, metal creaked, the storm roared in approval, and finally, the hatch gave way with a sudden, violent crack, sending a rush of cold, damp air upward from the darkness below. Maya froze. A narrow stairway descended into shadows, swallowed in murk and the scent of wet concrete. This wasn't a root cellar. This wasn't storage. This was something else, something intentional, something hidden, something waiting. Her fingers trembled around her phone, its dim glow barely reaching the first step. For a long moment she simply stood there, letting the cold air wash over her, listening to the slow, rhythmic drip echoing from below like a heartbeat deep in the earth. Then she exhaled, long and unsteady, and whispered to herself in a voice meant only for her own courage, "You bought this house. Now see what you bought into." Her foot found the first step. The old farmhouse groaned overhead, the storm tightening around its walls, as if trying to pull her back. But Maya descended another step, then another, drawn by equal parts fear and fate. Whatever waited beneath that hatch would not stay buried forever. And as she sank deeper into the darkness, she realized there was no turning back, not from the house, not from the secrets whispering beneath it, and not from the path she had unknowingly stepped onto the moment she spent her last $500. The storm rumbled above, sealing her choice, and Maya Delac, while walked deeper into the shadows, unaware that with each step she was getting closer to the truth that would change everything. As the night thickened and the house settled around her like a watching presence, she felt a quiet certainty take root. The real story was only beginning. After the storm softened into a cold, steady rain, Maya stepped cautiously back into the heart of the farmhouse, her thoughts still tangled in the memory of the hidden stairway and the heavy darkness that waited beneath it. She hadn't gone far the night before, only a few steps down, just enough to feel the breath of that underground space whisper against her skin like a secret relieved to be noticed. But exhaustion and fear had pulled her back to the surface, and she'd spent the night curled against the far wall upstairs, listening to the shifting bones of the house as if it were alive. By morning, the farmhouse felt different, calmer, older, watching. She moved slowly through the main hallway, her fingers grazing the walls swollen with damp and age. Sunlight pushed through the broken shutters in thin, trembling lines, illuminating dust that drifted through the air like lazy snow. And despite the ruin, despite the musty smell of rot and soaked timber, there was something undeniably intentional beneath the decayed details that didn't belong in a place left to drown: carvings, curves, hidden patterns beneath layers of peeling paint. Maya paused near the first archway, tracing a delicate swirl etched into the wood. The shape was simple but purposeful, circling back on itself in a smooth, elegant loop like a craftsman had taken pride in this place long before it became a bargain no one wanted. She whispered into the quiet, more to herself than the house. Who lived here, and why does it feel like they never really left? A soft breeze drifted through the hallway, though no window was open. It brushed her hair, carrying with it a faint scent, not mold, not mud, but something metallic and cold, tinged with the echo of water still trapped beneath the floorboards. The sensation sent a shiver down her arms. She followed it. Every step drew her deeper into the farmhouse's strange contradictions, ruin wrapped around something carefully constructed, as if the damage had been allowed, but the structure underneath had fought to endure. She entered what must have once been the dining room. The table had collapsed, chairs scattered like fallen bones around it, but the chandelier overhead, though rusted and dangling unevenly, still held shards of cut glass shaped like teardrops. They swung gently in the draught, catching the light and throwing trembling patches of brightness against the wet floor. That wasn't what caught her breath. It was the flooring beneath them. Unlike the warped boards in other rooms, the wood here was reinforced. Double, layered, screwed down with precise intervals, too precise for a simple farmhouse, too engineered for a place built decades ago. A subtle vibration pulsed beneath her shoes. At first, she dismissed it as distant thunder. But thunder didn't repeat at exact intervals. Her pulse quickened, her breath catching in her throat as she crouched, pressing her fingertips to the boards. The vibration hummed faintly, steady, almost rhythmic, like machinery lying silent for years but still remembering how to breathe. "What are you?" she whispered. The house didn't answer, but the vibration did. It grew, a slow, building murmur rising from the depths of the foundation, like something waking from a long, restless sleep. Maya stepped back, suddenly aware of her heartbeat racing to match the rhythm beneath her. She scanned the walls, the ceiling, the corners of the room, searching for logic, for something that made sense. Instead, she found another anomaly. Along the baseboard, hidden beneath layers of old wallpaper, and a faint series of markings. She peeled back the damp paper with trembling fingers, revealing etched symbols carved directly into the wooden frame. They were small, deliberate, almost architectural notes rather than decorative designs. She recognized none of them, not letters, not numbers, not anything she'd ever seen in a rural home. She leaned closer, brushing mud from the grooves. The faint hum beneath her seemed to shift, as if reacting to her touch. Maya jerked her hand away. Her breath trembled in her chest. This wasn't just an old house. It wasn't just a flood, damaged ruin sold for scraps. Something had been built here. Something beneath the surface, beneath the floorboards, beneath the life the farmhouse once pretended to have. The vibration quieted again, fading as suddenly as it had risen. Maya stood slowly, the silence growing too thick, too expectant. She backed toward the hall, her eyes still drawn to the etched symbols whispering from the walls. She tried to convince herself that it was nothing, just the settling of old wood, the echoes of the flood, the paranoia of a woman who had gambled her life on rotten beams and wishful thinking. But she didn't believe her own lies. Because the house wasn't settling, it was speaking, in the soft hum of hidden mechanisms, in the impossible reinforcement beneath her feet, in the symbols carved where no visitor would ever notice them. In the cold breath rising from the hatch she had forced open the night before, something had lived here, something had been built here, something had been buried here, and the deeper she went, the more the walls seemed to whisper her name. Maya took a slow, steadying breath and stepped back into the dim hallway, her resolve tightening with each heartbeat. The farmhouse was trying to tell her its secrets, and she was finally ready to listen. As the air shifted and the floor creaked beneath her, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She had only scratched the surface, and the darkest truths still waited below. The deeper Maya moved into the farmhouse, the more it felt as if every corner had been crafted with intention, every beam placed, every angle measured, every hidden detail tucked away for someone far more prepared than she was. As she stepped into the kitchen, a hush settled over the space, heavy and watchful, like the house was waiting to see what she would notice next. The old cabinets hung crooked from their hinges, waterlogged and beginning to crumble. But the tile beneath them, the flooring, was wrong for a farmhouse this old. Not the dusty checkerboard pattern she expected, nor the plain wooden planks worn smooth by generations. Instead, beneath layers of mud and scattered debris, she saw a clean geometric design peeking through. Angled lines intersecting at crisp 90-degree turns, forming a subtle grid that felt engineered rather than decorative. She knelt, wiping away grime with the edge of her sleeve. The tiles beneath her palm were smooth, too smooth, almost industrial in texture. An icy chill seeped upward through their surface, threading into her fingertips like a warning carried through stone. Why would a rural family home need a reinforced subfloor beneath its kitchen? A faint sound threaded through the room, soft, steady, rhythmic. Not the hum she'd felt earlier, something lighter, fainter, almost like a drip. She followed it. Step by step, the noise grew clearer. A slow, deliberate tap echoing from somewhere behind the pantry door. The air near it felt cooler, the scent sharper, tinged with the metallic whisper of old pipes or machinery long forgotten. When she opened the door, she expected shattered shelves or collapsed boards. Instead, she froze. The pantry was deeper than it should have been, unnaturally deep, stretching back farther than the houses lay, out aloud. The floor continued the same reinforced pattern. The walls were smoother, flatter, lacking the lumpy texture of old plaster. It felt less like a pantry and more like the entrance to a sealed corridor. The drip echoing through the space pulled her eyes downward. A thin stream of water trickled from a seam where the wall met the floor, disappearing into a crack she hadn't noticed before. Maya crouched, running her hand along the barely visible line. It wasn't a crack, it was a seam, another hidden access point. Her breath wavered. This wasn't accidental flood damage. This was water leaking into something concealed, something beneath the kitchen floor. She pressed her palm more firmly against the seam. The flooring vibrated faintly, responding like a trapped heartbeat beneath her touch. The vibration wasn't mechanical this time. It felt alive, a soft thrum of something buried, waiting, resisting. She pulled her hand back sharply. Her eyes traced the pantry walls again, and she noticed something faintly etched near the top corner, barely visible unless the light caught it perfectly. She lifted her phone, shining its dim glow upward. Symbols, the same style she had seen carved beneath the wallpaper. Precise, identical spacing, no artistic flair. Just cold, functional markings meant to communicate something to someone who understood their purpose. But Maya didn't. The farmhouse creaked behind her, the sound stretching through the hallway like a low groan. Dust drifted down from above, and the air thickened as if the house was holding its breath. Maya stepped backward out of the pantry, her pulse thundering in her ears. She leaned against the doorway to steady herself, every instinct inside her fighting between fear and a dangerous curiosity that refused to let go. When she inhaled again, something new reached her, an unexpected scent threaded beneath the dampness, not rot, not mold, not old timber, metal, cold metal. It drifted through the air faintly, like the residue of machinery hidden deep underground. She followed it. Her footsteps carried her toward the back of the house, where the living room connected to the space she hadn't yet explored, the old study. She brushed aside a swollen doorframe and stepped into the room. Bookshelves lined the walls, their contents ruined by the flood. Paper clung to the floor in wet clumps, ink bleeding into dark, chaotic smears. But the desk at the center of the room stopped her, not because it was intact, because of what lay beneath it. Where floodwater had eaten away at the carpeting, the floor underneath showed the same reinforced grid. And beneath the grid, something darker lurked, a faint, square outline impossibly smooth and defined. Another hatch, but unlike the one in the living room, this one was perfectly shaped, almost too perfect, like a puzzle piece locked into place. She reached out, touched the edge, and felt a chill radiate up her arm. The drip returned, echoing from below the floor, louder this time, almost beckoning. Maya's throat tightened. She sat back on her heels, staring at the hatch's outline as if it held every answer she didn't know how to ask. 3 hidden access points, reinforced beams, industrial flooring, symbols etched into walls, a vibration not born of age but intention. This wasn't a farmhouse with secrets. This was a secret disguised as a farmhouse. Her breath shuddered as truth finally began to form in her mind, fragile but undeniable. Someone had built something beneath this house, something they wanted to hide behind the facade of everyday rural life. Something complex, something reinforced, something alive enough to hum against her fingertips even after decades of neglect. And Maya Delac, while hadn't stumbled into a bargain, she had stumbled into a design. The house creaked again, louder this time, as if reacting to her realization. The window rattled. Wind pressed against the walls, and somewhere beneath the floor, the vibration pulsed again, rising just long enough to remind her that she was not alone inside these walls. She swallowed the fear tightening her chest. She had come too far to turn away now. As she backed toward the hallway, the faint hum faded again, retreating into the depths below. But the house did not go silent. It breathed with her, watched her, waited, and as she stepped into the dim light of the corridor, one thought echoed through her mind with chilling certainty. Whatever lay beneath this farmhouse had not been meant to be found. Yet somehow, impossibly, it had found her. As the last whisper of vibration faded into the floorboards, Maya knew the path ahead was no longer curiosity. It was destiny, and the shadows beneath her feet were just beginning to stir. After a sleepless night haunted by those impossible vibrations beneath the floors, Maya stood at the top of the basement stairs, clutching the railing as if it were the last stable thing left in her unraveling world. The morning air was cold enough to sting her lungs, but it grounded her. The chill, the damp, the faint scent of soil and rust rising from below. Everything about the farmhouse felt strange now, heavier, like the walls were waiting for her to take the next step. She turned on her flashlight, its thin beam cutting through the shadows curling at the bottom of the stairwell. The basement door hung open just enough for the damp air to seep upward, brushing her skin like a warning she already intended to ignore. Her fingers trembled as she pushed the door wider, The hinges screeched, echoing through the empty rooms behind her. The sound didn't feel like a simple creak. It felt like the house announcing her arrival. She exhaled slowly and began her descent. Each step groaned beneath her weight. Water still coated parts of the staircase, gathering in cold droplets along the railing and pooling in the indent of each wooden step. She could hear the faint tap, tap, tap of residual floodwater dripping somewhere in the depths. The light dimmed the farther she went, swallowed by a darkness that felt too thick, too deliberate. When she reached the bottom, her shoes met concrete, unexpected, jarringly out of place. She blinked, raising the flashlight higher. This wasn't a normal basement. The walls weren't stone or brick or aged timber like she expected. They were smooth, reinforced, industrial. Panels of thick metal framed the lower half of each wall, bolted down with precision. The concrete floor had faint lines etched into it, like partitions or measurements left behind by someone who knew exactly what they were constructing. A cold tremor slid up her spine. The basement was built, not for storage, not for shelter, but for something far more intentional. Her light drifted across the far wall, where the old floodwater had receded into a shallow pool near the corner. The reflection rippled, distorted by debris. She stepped carefully, heart pounding as the beam revealed deep grooves cut into the metal panels. Not damage, not corrosion, symbols. The same symbols she'd found beneath the wallpaper. Repeated here with a precision that felt clinical. Maya tightened her grip on the flashlight, her breath fogging faintly in the cold air. Why would a farmhouse have reinforced walls, etched with symbols? Built over hidden passages, she took another step, and the floor beneath her vibrated. Not the faint hum from upstairs, stronger, lower, a pulse. She froze. The vibration grew into a steady thrum, spreading through the soles of her shoes like a heartbeat rising from deep underground. It wasn't random, not the chaotic shaking of failing pipes or unstable support beams. It was rhythmic, measured, almost mechanical. Then, just as suddenly, it stopped. Silence swallowed the space, a silence so absolute it pressed on her eardrums, amplifying her own breath. She stood there, unmoving, waiting for the vibration to return. Nothing. Only the drip of water, only the distant sigh of the house above, only the thundering of her pulse. She continued forward, though every instinct begged her to turn back. Her light swept along the metallic wall until it caught something new, something that made her voice catch in her throat. A door, not wood, not even steel she recognized, but a thick, reinforced slab built seamlessly into the far wall. It glinted beneath the thin beam of her flashlight, cold, buried beneath grime, yet undeniably intentional. The edges were sealed with strips of industrial metal plating, welded into place like someone had tried to anchor it, contain it, lock it away forever. Maya stepped closer, her breath wavered. The door wasn't part of the farmhouse. It wasn't built by any local contractor, not part of the original structure, not part of rural life at all. This was something engineered for secrecy. She brushed away dirt from the surface, revealing a faded marking in the corner, barely visible, but unmistakably deliberate. A series of numbers, a partial emblem, scoured away by time and water. Governmental, military, private contractor. The thought chilled her. The hum returned, stronger than before. The metal beneath her fingertips quivered, responding to her touch as if the door itself recognized contact after years of isolation. She stumbled back, dropping the flashlight. It clattered against the floor, spinning and throwing frantic beams of light across the metal walls like trembling warnings. The vibration grew into a deep tremor, spreading outward across the entire basement. Dust fell from the ceiling. Water rippled violently in the shallow pool. patterns slicing across the surface like something beneath it was stirring. "Stop! Stop!" she whispered as though the house might listen. But it didn't. The humming rose to a low, steady drone that vibrated in her bones. She backed toward the stairs, her heart racing, her breath shallow. The reinforced door pulsed faintly, as if something behind it shifted, or responded, to her presence. And then, silence, utter, crushing silence. The hum vanished, the vibration died, the water stilled. The only sound was her own ragged breathing echoing off the walls. Maya bent slowly, picking up her flashlight with trembling fingers. She pointed it again toward the reinforced door. It stood silent and cold, offering no explanation, no movement, no trace of the hum that had filled the space moments before. But she knew what she felt, what she heard, what she saw. The door wasn't dead. It was aware. Whatever lay behind it had reacted to her presence, not randomly, not mechanically, directly. She swallowed hard, her throat dry, her chest tight. This wasn't just a hidden room, not a storm shelter, not leftover military scrap, not any explanation she could rationalize. This was something active, something waiting, something that had not been meant to see the light again. She took one final step backward, the faintest shiver lifting the hairs on her arms. As she backed toward the stairwell, one truth rose through her like a cold, rising tide. Whatever had been left beneath this house had not slept as deeply as she thought, and the moment she touched that door, it woke. As she climbed the stairs, the darkness behind her lingered, not silent, not empty, but listening, and Maya Delac realized the basement was not a place she had discovered. It was a place that had discovered her. The real awakening had only just begun. For the rest of the morning, Maya tried convincing herself that what she experienced in the basement had been nothing more than a strained imagination reacting to a strange house. She told herself the vibrations were leftover tremors from the storm, the hum a trick of acoustics, the shifting metal just the settling of a damaged structure. But the lie held for only minutes, because even as she walked through the upper floors, the memory of that humming door echoed through her bones, refusing to fade. Every creak, every breath of wind through the broken shutters reminded her that something down there had recognized her and responded. By noon, she stood once again at the top of the basement stairs, her pulse trembling in her throat. This time she wasn't alone. A local handyman named Paul, big, handed, blunt, spoken, and overly confident, had arrived at her request to help pump out the rest of the floodwater still pooling inside the lower level. He stepped inside the basement doorway without hesitation, but the moment he reached the bottom, she saw it happen. He stopped, completely, as if the air thickened around him. "Damn," he murmured, not in fear, but in confusion. "What kind of farmhouse basement is this?" Maya didn't answer. She couldn't. She only watched as he ran his hand along one of the reinforced walls, the same spot where she had felt the vibration pulse beneath her skin the day before. Paul tapped the metal once, twice, listening for an echo. Nothing. But Maya noticed the way his shoulders shifted, the tiniest tightening, so subtle only someone desperately searching for clues would see it. He wasn't spooked, but he wasn't comfortable either. "Looks like someone tried building a bunker down here," he said. "Strange place for it. Rural folks don't usually hide steel behind their foundations." Maya kept her flashlight close to her chest, gripping it tight enough to ache. "It doesn't feel like a bunker," she whispered. Paul squinted at her. "What does it feel like?" She didn't answer. She couldn't put into words the way the door hummed beneath her touch, the way the basement had awakened at her presence. She knew how it sounded. Irrational, ridiculous, impossible. So she forced herself to breathe and pointed toward the half-flooded section instead. "There's more water that needs draining," she said. He pulled out the portable pump he'd brought, muttered something about old plumbing, and got to work. For a while, the grinding sound of the pump filled the basement, masking the silence that had unnerved her before. Maya helped where she could, dragging debris out of the way, clearing fallen wood, peeling soaked insulation from the walls. Every so often, her eyes drifted back to the reinforced door standing at the far end of the basement. It was silent now, still, cold, but it wasn't forgotten. As the water level dropped inch by inch, new details emerged. Metal support rails embedded along the walls, reinforced crossbeams hidden under concrete, and a strange grid pattern etched into the lower half of the walls, all pointing to a level of engineering far beyond any farmhouse she'd ever seen. Whoever built this, Paul muttered, wiping sweat from his forehead, knew exactly what they were doing. She nodded, though a chill slipped through her, because the deeper the basement revealed itself, the more she realized something terrifying. None of it belonged here. None of it matched the land records. None of it made sense. Her eyes drifted again to the heavy, silent vault-like door. Maybe it was her imagination. Maybe she was overthinking. Maybe she was just tired. But the floor beneath her feet felt different now, less like foundation and more like a lid built to cover something. When the pump sputtered to a stop, Paul leaned down to clear debris from its filter. As he shifted the hose, the beam of his flashlight skimmed across the door, revealing something Maya hadn't seen before. A dent, small, subtle, almost invisible, but a dent nonetheless. Paul straightened. Storm debris must have hit it. Maya's breath slowed. No, she whispered. It's pushing outward. Paul stared at her. What? Her voice cracked, barely audible. Something hit it from the inside. Silence clamped around them. Cold, thick, smothering. Paul cleared his throat quickly, brushing it off. Probably old pressure from rusting hinges. Nothing inside, just empty space. But Maya couldn't look away, because the dent wasn't shaped like pressure from within frozen metal. It looked like a fist. She stepped toward the door, the concrete cold beneath her shoes. Her heartbeat drummed in her ears as she raised her flashlight. When the beam touched the metal, the faint vibration returned beneath her feet. Not strong, not obvious. Just enough for her bones to remember it. Maya? Paul's voice cut through the tension. She jumped. Let's finish draining this and get you upstairs, he said. This place is giving you nerves. He meant it kindly. But the basement wasn't giving her nerves. It was giving her warnings. As they continued working, a new sound joined the constant drip of water. Subtle, soft, muffled. It came from behind the door. A shift of metal. A faint creak, the ghost of movement. Paul didn't hear it, but Maya did, and it wasn't the sound of a structure settling. It was the sound of something adjusting, like it had been waiting, not sleeping. And now it was listening. As they headed back up the stairs, Maya paused halfway, turning her gaze back toward the reinforced door. For one fleeting heartbeat, she could have sworn she saw it tremble. Just once. Barely, like something behind it took a breath. She gripped the railing hard enough for her knuckles to whiten. She knew the truth now. The basement wasn't revealing itself. It was revealing what it protected. And whatever waited behind that door had just started to wake up. As Paul stepped outside, unaware of the dread coiling inside her, Maya lingered in the doorway, staring into the darkness below. The house had secrets. But the basement had intentions, and the unease settling in her chest whispered the same chilling truth. It wanted her to come back. The shadows pressed against the silence as she slowly closed the door behind her, knowing nothing she had discovered so far, compared to what waited next. After leaving the basement, Maya tried to return to normal life, if normal still meant bills stacked like barricades, a fridge humming like it was dying, and the quiet weight of a farmhouse that was anything but empty. But every hour she spent away from that reinforced door felt like a lie pressing against her ribs. She could hear its hum in her memory, feel the vibration in her bones, see the shape of that outward dent every time she closed her eyes. By the next morning, she surrendered to the truth. She needed to understand what she had found, not emotionally, not spiritually, practically. She needed answers, and answers required digging. She sat at the tiny kitchen table of her apartment, laptop open, the screen flickering weakly as if it too sensed the tension in the room. She typed with slow, deliberate precision. Reinforced underground room, rural property, illegal construction. Steel door, hidden basement, residential building code. Symbols carved in metal walls meaning. None of it brought her closer to understanding. Most articles were about storm shelters, panic rooms, old bunkers built during Cold War, paranoia. But the door in her basement wasn't a relic of fear. It was built by someone who used exact measurements, industrial, grade metal, military, style reinforcement, bolts meant to resist pressure, pressure from outside, or pressure from whatever was inside. She leaned back, exhaling shakily. The search results weren't helping, so she tried something else. She dug into the official records of the farmhouse, property reports, land surveys, historical documents. The county website loaded slowly, like it resented giving up information. But when it did, the surprise hit her like cold water. The house technically existed on paper, but the owner didn't. The last registered owner of the farmhouse was listed simply as name, archive entry pending citizen record, not available transfer of ownership, classified, on a rural property. That made no sense. Her pulse quickened as she tried to click deeper, but most links opened to blank pages or error messages. She dug further, tracking every reference to the owner. There wasn't a single photograph. No employment records, no birth or death certificate, just a redacted folder icon and a date, 43 years ago. Someone had erased this person. Someone had made sure the world forgot who built that basement. Then she noticed a second oddity. The house wasn't originally built in the year the county claimed. The oldest aerial photos she found, grainy shots from decades ago, showed a structure in the same location, but smaller, simpler. A shed-like building, not a farmhouse, no renovations listed, no rebuilding permit, no construction record for the reinforced basement. It simply appeared 1 year out of nowhere. Her breathing slowed. Someone had hidden a massive underground structure beneath a harmless-looking house and removed all records of the person who owned it. She opened a new tab and searched again. Residential property, classified owner, military vault building. This time, a search result caught her eye. A forum thread from years ago. Only a handful of posts. Someone describing a sealed basement door found on private land. Their photos, now deleted, had been described as military, grade, custom, and off the books. The commenters argued back and forth, some claiming it was a leftover project from a decommissioned contractor, others saying it was impossible for such a structure to exist legally in a civilian home. The last comment, posted by a user who had since deleted their account, simply read, "If you ever find a door like that, do not open it. They were built to contain something, not store it." Maya swallowed hard. Her laptop screen flickered again, glitching suddenly, lines of distortion crackling across the page before clearing. She frowned, refreshing the forums, but the entire thread disappeared, gone, as if it had never existed. Her hands shook. She snapped the laptop shut, the sound echoing too loudly in the tiny kitchen. She needed fresh air. She needed clarity. She needed answers that didn't vanish from the internet. Her phone buzzed. She glanced down. A message from Paul. "Still thinking about that basement. Can come by again tomorrow." Maya stared at the words, feeling a knot twist inside her. She didn't know whether she was relieved or terrified. She felt safer with another person there, but the idea of someone else being near that door made her stomach churn with a protectiveness she didn't understand. She typed a quick reply, yes, tomorrow morning. But as she set the phone down, something tugged her attention back to her laptop. Her reflection stared back from the dark screen, pale, shaken but determined. A thought formed, fragile but insistent. If the internet wouldn't tell her what the door was, if the records were scrubbed, if the owner had been erased, then someone didn't want this vault found, which meant someone, somewhere, knew it existed, and they would have a reason to keep it hidden. A reason big enough to bury a person's entire identity. Maya pushed herself up from the table, pacing as the realization settled into her chest like a weight she couldn't drop. This wasn't a simple anomaly. This wasn't a strange quirk of rural architecture. This wasn't an accident. The door in her basement should not exist. Not legally, not historically, not structurally. Someone built it in secret. Someone erased the evidence. Someone wanted it forgotten. And now she had found it. Thunder rumbled even though the sky outside was clear, and the farmhouse, miles away, seemed to echo in her mind with a haunting certainty. She wasn't uncovering a mystery. She was stepping into one. And every answer she found only widened the questions waiting beneath her feet. As dusk dimmed the world outside her window, one truth tightened around her like a closing fist. Whatever was behind that door was never meant to be opened, and yet she knew she would open it anyway, because secrets that shouldn't exist are the ones that refuse to stay buried. When Maya returned to the farmhouse the next morning, the air felt heavier than the sky above it. A thin layer of mist clung to the ground, curling around her shoes as she crossed the yard. The silence was unnatural, too still, too watchful. Even the wind seemed to avoid the place, as though the house carried a presence strong enough to hold nature back. Her keys jingled faintly, but her hand shook so badly she struggled to fit the right one into the lock. Yesterday's research replayed in her mind: classified owners, missing records, anonymous warnings. She didn't want to be here, but the pull of that impossible door had rooted itself inside her, stubborn as a heartbeat. The moment she pushed the door open, the air shifted. A cool current swept past her feet, rising from the basement like a breath escaping the house itself. She froze on the threshold, forcing herself to breathe. Then she stepped inside. The floors creaked softly under her weight, but not randomly. The sound had a pattern to it now, low groans, timed with her steps, almost as if the house were acknowledging her return. She moved through the hallway, her flashlight beam tracing the same strange symbols she had uncovered yesterday. Now that she knew they weren't decorative, they felt ominous silent warnings carved into the skeleton of the home by hands that didn't want to be remembered. When she reached the basement door, she stopped. Something was different. The wood was cold, not basement cold, not damp cold, a deep metallic cold, like it had absorbed the chill of the reinforced chamber below and carried it upward. Her fingers hovered over the handle. Just as she touched it, a faint vibration trembled through the metal. She jerked her hand back. The vibration lasted only half a second, too quick to name, too subtle to justify. But it was enough. The door was reacting to her. That wasn't a hallucination. That wasn't imagination. That was real. She swallowed the rising panic, forced her hand back to the handle, and pushed the door open. The basement waited below still, silent, watching. She descended carefully, the temperature dropping with every step. By the time she reached the concrete floor, the air felt several degrees colder than the rest of the house. Her breath fogged faintly as she exhaled. The waterfall had drained yesterday, left behind strange stains along the walls, dark, irregular shapes that looked almost like fingerprints dragged across metal. She tried not to stare at them as she walked toward the reinforced panels, her flashlight trembling in her grip. She wasn't alone down here. She could feel it. Not a person, not an animal, a presence. Something that lingered, heavy and unseen, hovering in the silence like a memory that refused to die. She crouched near the door, her fingers hovering inches above its surface. The dent was still there, faint, outward, deliberate. Now that she saw it with clarity, it wasn't shaped like a blow from within the basement. It was shaped like pressure, targeted pressure, focused force, as if something had pushed, not flailed, against the door. Her throat tightened. This wasn't a door meant to keep something out. It was built to keep something in. She rose slowly, backing away until she felt the cold metal wall press against her spine. Her mind raced through everything she'd discovered: missing owner records, erased identity, unregistered structure, industrial reinforcement, secret hatches, symbols etched into the foundation like a code no one was supposed to decipher. Every piece pointed to one undeniable truth: someone built a vault beneath this house. Someone hid it behind a farmhouse facade. Someone tried to bury whatever was inside it. But the thought that cut the deepest was the one she didn't want to admit. Whatever lay behind that door wasn't just valuable. It wasn't just dangerous. It wasn't just forbidden. It was alive enough to react. Her chest tightened, breath shallow. She forced herself to walk the perimeter of the room, scanning every inch for answers. And then she found something she had missed before. Tucked behind a loose metal panel near the ceiling, a sliver of paper, preserved by the metal, sealed away from water and time. She climbed onto a crate and pried it free. A single sheet, yellowed, crisp, the edges marked with faint symbols. Her hands shook as she unfolded it. A blueprint, not of the farmhouse, of the underground structure. Cold dread laced through her chest as her eyes followed the lines. The basement she stood in was only the first level. Beneath it, 2 more levels, each smaller, more reinforced, more isolated. The deepest one, a single rectangular chamber, no labels, no instructions. Just a thick wall around it, shaded in dark ink like a cage. Her fingers tightened around the blueprint as icy certainty spread through her. The door wasn't the end, it was the beginning. The first wall between her and something that had been entombed here deliberately. She stared at the drawing, at the deepest chamber with its heavy ink, her pulse racing with fear and fascination she couldn't separate. Someone built this with intention, someone hid it, someone erased it. And someone, something, had left a dent on the inside of the door. Maya stepped back, the silence pressing against her spine. The basement wasn't humming now. It wasn't vibrating. It wasn't shaking, and that scared her more than the noise. Stillness meant waiting. Stillness meant listening. Stillness meant control. Whatever was behind that reinforced door, whatever had made that dent, whatever had reacted to her touch, it was aware of her, and it was patient. As the cold drafted across her skin, she felt the truth settle in her bones like a premonition. She hadn't found a vault. She had found a warning, and soon, very soon, she would have to decide whether to heed it or break it, because secrets like this didn't stay buried forever. As Maya climbed the stairs and the basement swallowed itself in darkness once more, one chilling certainty followed her up into the dim light. The door that shouldn't exist was only the first she would open. By the next morning, Maya's nerves felt stretched thin, pulled taut between fear of the unknown and the unbearable weight of not knowing enough. The blueprint she had uncovered lay folded in her coat pocket, its brittle edges pressing against her hip with every step she took. She had memorized it overnight, every line, every chamber, every reinforced layer. The deeper she studied it, the more her mind circled one undeniable conclusion. The vault under her farmhouse had been engineered to resist intrusion, engineered to contain pressure, engineered to protect, or imprison, whatever lay inside. And she had already awakened it. Paul arrived just after sunrise, his truck rumbling loudly up the driveway. The worn tires crackled over gravel as he hopped out with a toolbox and the stubborn confidence of someone who believed every problem could be solved with elbow grease and enough metal. "What's the next step?" he asked, swinging his jacket over his shoulder. Maya hesitated. Everything inside her screamed to keep him away from the door, away from whatever waited behind it, but logic won. She needed help. She needed someone who could force that door open, someone who didn't tremble at the sound of its hum. She gestured toward the basement. "I want to open it." Paul blinked, eyebrows shooting upward. "You're serious about this?" "Yes." Her voice cracked from fear and resolve fused together. He nodded slowly. "Then let's take a look." Together they descended, the basement greeting them with the same unnatural chill. But today, the air felt even heavier, as though the structure itself sensed intrusion coming. Paul stepped up to the reinforced door, tapping it once, twice, listening to the metallic echo. "Hinges are external," he said. "Bolts are internal. We can't remove the frame, so we'll have to work at the mechanism." Maya's stomach twisted. "And how long would that take?" "Depends." He knelt, shining his flashlight along the edges. "Best case, a few hours. Worst case, this thing was designed to stay shut." It was. He didn't look up. "Yeah, I'm starting to see that." Maya hovered close behind him, heart thudding, palms damp. As Paul worked, unscrewing the rusted outer housing, the door remained silent, too silent. The hum from yesterday hadn't returned. No vibration stirred beneath the metal. It was dormant now, like a creature conserving energy, waiting. While Paul pried at the lower hinge with a crowbar, Maya stepped back to gather her breath. Her light swept over the metal walls, the etched symbols, the blueprint in her mind. Everything pointed to the same conclusion. Opening this vault wasn't just risky. It was forbidden by design. But she couldn't turn back, not now, not after discovering how deliberately this secret had been buried. Paul grunted, metal screeched, and the first hinge gave a sharp crack. One down. He muttered proudly, "This thing'll open if we keep at it." Maya nodded, though fear coiled low in her stomach. When he shifted to the second hinge, something in the air changed. A faint vibration pulsed through the floor, soft, subtle, barely a whisper. Maya froze. Another pulse followed, this time stronger. "Paul." "Stop." He barely heard her over the sound of wrenching metal. "What? Stop?" She repeated louder. He sat back, confused. "What's wrong?" Before she could answer, the vibration intensified. Low, rhythmic, alive. It surged through the metal walls like a slow, awakening heartbeat. Paul frowned, gripping the crowbar tighter. "What the hell is that?" Maya backed away, shaking her head. "It reacts to force." "What reacts?" "There's nothing in." The door pulsed. Not shook, not rattled. Pulsed. A deep, resonant throb that spread through the floor, the walls, and Maya's chest all at once. Paul stumbled backward, dropping the crowbar, his face paling. "It's moving," he whispered. "That door moved." The air thickened with something electric-charged, like an atmosphere before lightning strikes. Then the vibration stopped, completely. Silence, oppressive, absolute. Paul's breath trembled. "Maya, whatever's behind that door." A noise cut him off, a soft clink, metal, from above. They both snapped their heads upward as faint footsteps crossed the floorboards overhead. Slow, precise, deliberate. Maya's blood ran cold. No one should be inside the house. She had locked the door behind them. They were alone. Paul mouthed silently, "Someone's here." The footsteps moved again, this time toward the basement door. The overhead floor groaned under the weight. One step, another, then another, each slower than the last. Maya's heart pounded. Paul grabbed the crowbar, stepping in front of her protectively. Together they stared upward as dust rained softly from the ceiling with every careful step above them. The basement door creaked. Someone, something, was on the other side. The doorknob rattled, once, twice, slow, testing. Maya's breath hitched, frozen in her chest. Paul tightened his grip on the crowbar, muscles tensed. Then silence. Doorknob stilled. No footsteps retreated. No movement followed. Just silence thick enough to strangle the air. Paul whispered, "Stay behind me." He stepped toward the stairs, lifting the crowbar. Each step he took echoed too loudly. The basement felt smaller with every heartbeat. Halfway up he paused. "Maya," he whispered, "the door's open." Her breath caught. The basement door was open, just a few inches, but unmistakably wide enough for someone to have slipped inside. And yet the hall above was empty. No footsteps, no movement, no sound. Someone had opened the door, then vanished. Maya's body trembled as a realization slid cold, sharp into her chest. The door beneath the basement wasn't the only hidden entrance in the farmhouse. Someone had been watching them. Someone had been waiting. And someone now knew they were trying to breach the vault. As Maya climbed the stairs behind Paul, the reinforced door below remained silent, but the threat above them had just awakened, and it wasn't waiting inside the vault. It was already in the house. Paul pushed the basement door fully open, stepping into the hallway with cautious, measured breaths. The farmhouse was silent, too silent, like the air had been sealed inside a jar. Dust motes floated lazily in the thin beam of his flashlight, settling on floorboards that hadn't creaked since the footsteps stopped. Maya followed him, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. She kept glancing behind her, half expecting the basement door to swing shut on its own. The silence made every movement amplify. The faint rustle of her jacket, the soft thud of her shoes against the wood, the trembling breath she exhaled when she realized that whoever had opened the door was no longer visible. But they were still here. She could feel it. Paul motioned her toward the living room. "Stay close," he murmured, gripping the crowbar with both hands. Her voice shook. "Do you think they're still inside?" He didn't answer, not verbally, but the way his jaw tightened was enough. They moved down the hall, checking each room. Everything looked the same as before. Broken furniture, warped floors, water stains still dark from the storm. No footprints, no open windows, no signs of forced entry. But the front door told a different story. The lock, strong yesterday, was now scratched, not broken, not smashed, picked. Maya's breath hitched. Someone came in on purpose. Paul leaned closer, examining the metal. Not kids messing around, not squatters. Someone with skill. And they left without taking anything. Maya whispered. "No," his voice darkened. "They weren't here for the house." A shiver ran down her spine. They were here for the door beneath it. She gripped her coat tighter around herself, trying to steady the trembling. The feeling of being watched had settled over her like a second skin. Cold, tight, impossible to peel away. Paul moved toward the back of the house, checking the old study, the pantry, the narrow corridor leading to the kitchen. Nothing had changed, but the silence followed them like a shadow. Only when they reached the front door again did Maya notice something she hadn't before. The curtain on the window beside the door, still soaked from last night's storm, was pulled a few inches aside. A gap barely wide enough to peek through. She hadn't opened it. Paul hadn't opened it. Someone had been standing there, watching, listening, waiting. She pressed a shaky hand to her mouth. "They saw us go into the basement." Paul stiffened. "And they know what we're trying to open." The realization hit her hard. This wasn't a random break-in. This wasn't curiosity. This was surveillance. Someone knew the vault existed. Someone wanted access to it. And someone had been waiting for the exact moment she meddled with it. The house groaned as a gust of wind rattled the old frame, but it didn't soothe her. It only made the silence more suffocating. She backed away from the window, pulse racing, mind spiraling. "What do they want?" she whispered. Paul's voice dropped. "Whatever's behind that door." Her stomach twisted. He continued more quietly, "And if they're smart, they'll wait until we make progress. Let us do the hard work, then take what they want." The thought turned her blood to ice. Someone out there was waiting for her to open the vault, and they were close enough to slip inside the house unnoticed. A low rumble of thunder shook the windows, though the sky outside was clear. Maya jumped. Paul steadied her with a hand on her shoulder. "Hey," he murmured, "we're not helpless, but we need to be smart." She nodded, though the fear coiled tighter. "We should leave," Paul said. "Regroup, get what we need, come back with tools capable of actually breaching that thing." "What if they come back while we're gone?" Maya whispered. "What if they try to open it themselves?" Paul met her eyes. "Then we make sure they can't." He returned to the basement door, rummaging through his toolbox. Within minutes he installed a temporary deadbolt on the upper frame. Rough, imperfect, but enough to slow anyone down. Maya watched him secure the last screw, but it didn't comfort her. The house had too many secrets, too many ways in. As they stepped outside, she felt the wind shift, the trees rustled, the grass trembled, and somewhere far beyond the fence line, a dark silhouette slipped behind a cluster of trees, too fast to recognize, too slow to be an animal. Paul narrowed his eyes. "Did you see that?" Maya's voice barely escaped her throat. "Someone's watching." He clenched the toolbox, scanning the tree line. "Get in the truck." She obeyed, slipping into the passenger seat, her heart hammering like a drum. The air in the truck was warm, but she couldn't stop shaking. As Paul started the engine, the farmhouse loomed in the rearview mirror. Silent, hunched, waiting. She could feel eyes on her, following her, measuring her, and when Paul turned onto the dirt road, pulling away from the property, something glinted in the side mirror, a pair of headlights, dim, slow, following from a distance. Maya's throat tightened. "Paul," she whispered, "someone's behind us." He didn't look. He just pressed down on the gas, jaw clenching hard. "Yeah, I know." The headlights kept their distance, not rushing, not chasing, just watching. Following, waiting. The vault wasn't the only threat now. Something else had awakened, and the people who wanted it were already here, hidden in the shadows, tracking her every move, closing in with a patience more terrifying than the door beneath the floor. As the truck sped down the old county road, Maya felt the truth settle cold and heavy in her chest. Opening the vault wasn't their greatest danger anymore. Being watched was. The following morning, sleep clung to Maya like fog, thin, fragile, and full of tremors. She barely remembered how she made it through the night. Every sound outside her apartment window felt like footsteps. Every rumble of a passing car felt like the slow crawl of that shadowed vehicle following behind Paul's truck. But morning meant choices, and she had run out of time for fear. She stood at the kitchen counter, hands trembling as she tightened the straps on her tool bag. The blueprint, now creased at every fold, peeked from her coat pocket, a reminder that there was no turning back. Whatever was behind that door was the key to everything. The bray, Kins, the erased owner, the strange hum, the watchers in the dark. Paul arrived a few minutes later, coffee in hand, and an energy that didn't match Maya's spiraling dread. He tried to reassure her with small talk, but she barely heard him. Her mind was already inside the basement, listening for vibrations, imagining the impossible cold of the reinforced door. By the time they pulled up to the farmhouse, a strange quiet had settled over the property. No wind, no birds. Even the grass stood still, motionless, as if holding its breath. Paul stepped out first. "Let's make this quick." Maya nodded, though her heart felt anything but steady. She walked toward the house, every step heavy with anticipation. Her fingers brushed the front door's frame before pushing it open. The air inside smelled the same, damp, metallic, touched by a kind of stillness that never left. But something was wrong. The deadbolt Paul had installed on the basement door was broken. Not forced, not smashed, unlatched from the inside. Her breath caught. Paul. He moved past her, jaw tightening as he examined the broken bolt. They were here, while we were gone. Her stomach twisted. Did they open it? He shook his head. If they did, we'd see marks. This looks clean. Maya didn't feel relief, only a deeper dread. Someone had been inside the basement, close enough to the door to tamper with the bolt, but they hadn't breached the vault. They couldn't, yet, but they wanted her to. That realization clawed through her chest. They were using her, watching her, waiting for her to take the risk they wouldn't. The house groaned as Paul opened the basement door, the wood dragging across the frame like a sigh. They descended together, Maya gripping the railing so tightly her fingers numbed. The basement greeted them with its familiar cold. The reinforced walls glimmered faintly in the flashlight beam. The symbols seemed darker today, sharper, as though someone had traced them during the night. And the vault door, the thing that had hummed, throbbed, and pulsed, stood silent again. But this silence didn't feel dormant. It felt deliberate. Paul approached it with the kind of confidence only someone who didn't understand the danger could have. "Today," he said, "we finish the job." Maya's voice trembled. "Be careful." He gave her a small smile. Always. He wasn't. The moment he wedged the crowbar into the beam casing, Maya's breath seized. Every vibration from the past days echoed in her nerves. She expected the hum, the pulse, the living tremor to rise again, but nothing came. The door remained still, too still. Then Paul grunted. There, the top casing's loose. Metal clanged as he peeled away the rusted housing, revealing the mechanism beneath. A thick steel lock system, far too advanced for any civilian structure. Maya stepped closer, studying it. 5 interlocking bolts. A rotating internal wheel, a pressure seal, military-level engineering. She exhaled shakily. This shouldn't be here. Which means whatever's inside is worth finding, Paul replied. Maya didn't like the glint in his eyes. Curiosity, greed, excitement. Something she hadn't seen before. "No," she whispered. "Paul, that's exactly what worries me." But he didn't stop. He moved to the second casing, prying it open with heavy force. The metal screeched, echoing across the basement like a scream trapped in steel. Then it happened. A faint vibration spread under their feet. Maya froze. Paul didn't feel it, but she did. Her breath grew shallow. "Paul, it's waking up." "What is the door?" He frowned. "Relax, it's just the metal shifting." But Maya wasn't imagining it. The vibration grew stronger, slow, rhythmic, deliberate, like a heartbeat matching her own. Then a click, a small, innocent sound, but it struck her like thunder. Paul froze, crowbar lifted midair. "Did you hear that?" Maya nodded slowly. Something unlocked. The silence deepened. Paul leaned closer to the mechanism. Maybe the pressure shifted. Another click, this time louder, clear, mechanical. Then a third, a fourth, rapid, intentional. The vault was unlocking itself. Maya's pulse hammered. Paul stepped back. He didn't. A fifth click echoed, and the bolts retracted with a deep metallic groan that vibrated through the entire basement. Paul stumbled backward, the crowbar clattering onto the concrete. "Oh my God," he whispered. "It's opening." Dust rained from the ceiling. The reinforced door heaved, shifting forward just an inch, then another, as if something inside had heard them, as if something inside had been waiting. The weight of the moment hung thick in the air as the vault cracked open the width of a hand, releasing a breath of air, so cold it stole the warmth from Maya's skin. She took a step back, every instinct screaming to run. but curiosity, terror, and destiny collided inside her chest as the reinforced door groaned open wider, revealing the darkness beyond it. Paul lifted his flashlight first. The beam disappeared into the void. "What the hell?" he murmured, but Maya wasn't looking at the dark corridor revealed beyond, or the industrial walls or the dust swirling inside. Her gaze was fixed on the floor near the threshold. Footprints, fresh, human, leading out of the vault. Her breath died in her throat. Someone had already opened it, not years ago, not decades, recently. The vault wasn't just opening. It had been opened before, and whoever stepped out never left the house. A trembling cold swept through her as the realization settled in her bones. They weren't about to discover the vault's secrets. They were about to follow someone else's footsteps, someone who might still be here, watching. As the reinforced door widened with a final hiss inviting them in, Maya felt the truth close around her like a tightening noose. The vault didn't just hold answers. It held a presence, and it had finally let them inside. The air that drifted from the vault felt ancient, cold enough to sting, sharp enough to raise every hair on Maya's skin. It didn't smell like a basement or old metal. It smelled like sealed time, untouched, unmoved, unbreathed for decades, the kind of cold that carried memory instead of temperature. Paul lifted his flashlight again, but the beam wavered as though the darkness swallowed it before it reached the far wall. Maya stepped closer, her pulse a trembling thread. Those footprints, fresh, undeniable, stopped just outside the threshold, turning slightly toward the staircase, toward the house, toward them. Whoever made them had walked out and vanished into the farmhouse. "Paul," she whispered, "someone was in there." He forced a laugh, brittle and hollow, or it's mud, maybe water patterns. No, her voice cracked. "Those are boots, new, deep. Someone walked out." She crouched, trembling fingers brushing the edge of one print. The mud was moist, hours old, not days. She pulled her hand back like she'd touched something burning. Paul swallowed hard. Then where are they now? The silence answered for him. Every surface inside the vault seemed to watch them. Taking a breath she didn't fully trust, Maya stepped inside. The concrete corridor stretched forward, long and narrow, its walls reinforced with steel panels that reflected thin strips of their flashlight beams. The sound of her footsteps echoed, slow, hollow, far too loud for her liking. Behind her, Paul followed, though she could hear the hesitation in every inch of his movement. The air grew colder the deeper they went. The walls bore no markings, no labels, only the occasional welded seam and faint scorch marks that hinted at machinery once pressed against them. A disturbing thought crept through Maya's mind. This place wasn't designed for storage. It was designed to contain something. As the corridor opened into a larger chamber, Maya felt her breath falter. Crates, stacks of them. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Metal shipping crates sealed tight, stamped with codes she couldn't decipher. Some were marked with faded insignias, partially scorched, partially sanded away as though someone had tried to erase them. Dust coated the tops of the crates like a gray blanket, yet the floor around them was disturbingly clean. Paul walked ahead, running his fingers over the nearest crate. "These aren't cheap," he muttered. "This is industrial freight, military-grade stuff." Maya's chest tightened. "Then why hide them here?" He shook his head. "I don't know." As Maya moved through the chamber, something metallic clinked beneath her shoe. She paused, kneeling to pick up a small object, a broken seal, the kind used on shipping containers. It bore a symbol, an eagle's wing, partially erased, and a series of numbers scratched out by a knife. Someone tried to scrub the identity off every trace of what this place once was. Her fingers trembled as she stood. "Paul," she whispered, "none of this is natural. This wasn't an accident. Someone hid all of this." He didn't answer. He was staring at something behind her. Slowly she turned, Along the opposite wall stood a row of smaller crates, sleek, tightly sealed, each marked with bold red lettering. Restricted level R, authorized access only, property of redacted, but one crate, only one, sat partially open. And inside it, Maya felt all the air leave her lungs. Gold. Neat stacks of gold bars gleamed beneath the flashlight beam. Perfect, pristine, untouched by time. Their edges were smooth, the serial stamps crisp. Next to them, sealed packets of bearer bonds rested like sleeping secrets. Papers worth fortunes, designed for anonymity, impossible to trace. Paul inhaled sharply. Oh my, Maya, this is real. She couldn't look away. The vault wasn't just a bunker. It wasn't just a hidden structure. It was a treasury, a secret stockpile of unimaginable wealth. Millions, tens of millions, maybe more. Her heartbeat thundered like a war drum inside her ribs. Greed wasn't something she was used to feeling, but awe was, fear was. The impossible weight of this discovery pressed down on her harder than any nightmare. Paul ran a hand through his hair. Maya, this is more money than we've ever seen. This is life-changing. She didn't respond, because her eyes had caught something else in the crate, something that made her blood run cold. A folder, old, sealed, brittle around the edges. She reached for it with trembling fingers, pulling it free from beneath the gold. It was labeled in thick black ink. Operation Arcadia, internal evidence not for civilian access. Her fingers went numb. Paul stared at the folder. What the hell is that? Maya opened it. Inside were page after page of old military reports. Canned memos, handwritten notes, diagrams of the book's financial channels, coded movements of assets, and one page, stamped urgently in red, caught her eye. She lifted it closer. Unauthorized discovery of vault will trigger retrieval protocol. If breached by civilian hands, assume hostile intent. Initiate elimination sequence. Her breath died in her throat. Elimination sequence. Her knees weakened. Paul, this place, it wasn't abandoned. It was buried, shut down, hidden, and if anyone opens it. He finished her sentence in a whisper. They come for them. As if the vault heard the words, a low metallic hum vibrated through the chamber. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Paul stiffened. Did you feel that? Maya clutched the folder to her chest. Someone else already opened this. The footprints, the broken seal, the vanished owner, the watchers outside. Everything snapped into place. They weren't the first to find this vault. They were the first to reopen it. And whoever used to guard this treasure, whoever built this place, wasn't done with it. The hum deepened into a long, eerie resonance that traveled up the walls, across the floor, and through Maya's bones. Then somewhere deeper inside the vault, a distant metallic clang echoed. Not machinery, not pipes, not settling steel, a door, closing or opening. Someone was here. Someone else was in the vault with them. Maya's voice trembled as she whispered the truth she didn't want to believe. We're not alone down here. The darkness ahead shifted, the faintest ripple of movement, a whisper of breath that didn't belong to either of them, and the vault, the sealed, forgotten vault, came alive around them. They had found the treasure, but now the treasure's guardians were finding them. For a long moment, Maya couldn't move. She stood frozen between the open crate of gleaming gold bars and the shadowy corridor where that metallic clang had echoed, caught helplessly between fortune and fear. The cold breath of the vault pressed against her skin, reminding her of where she was, what she'd seen, and all the danger that now coiled around her like a tightening vine. Paul kept his flashlight fixed on the dark passage ahead, jaw clenched, muscles taut. We need to get out of here, he whispered, but Maya didn't move. She stared at the gold, the wealth, the impossible, unbelievable whirl, shifting wealth, stacks of bars, each worth more than her entire life. There are bonds that could erase every hardship she'd ever known, riches sealed away in the dark, abandoned and untouched, waiting for someone desperate enough or foolish enough to claim them. Her breath trembled as the realization sank in. With just one crate, her daughter would never struggle again. With just one bar, her debt would disappear. With just a fraction of what lay in this vault, she could rewrite her entire future. And yet, her hands shook, because wealth this enormous didn't feel like salvation. It felt like a curse. Hey. Paul touched her arm gently. Look at me. We'll come back for this, but right now we're leaving. She tore her eyes from the gold, swallowing the knot forming in her throat. What if we can't? What if someone comes before we do? He didn't answer, not because he had no reply, but because they both knew the truth. Someone had been here, someone was coming back, and someone was willing to kill for this treasure. Paul stepped closer to the open crate, tugging it shut with effort. The metal squealed, the heavy lid sliding into place with a muted thud. The sound echoed like a warning. Listen, he whispered. Whoever walked in here before us isn't here now, but they might be close, and if they hear us. A soft scrape echoed deep inside the vault. Maya's pulse stuttered. Paul grabbed her wrist. Maya, we move, now. They retreated toward the corridor, walking backward, keeping their eyes fixed on the dark chamber where the crates towered like silent guards. Every step felt wrong, like turning their backs on danger, like leaving something alive behind them. As they crossed the threshold into the main passage, Maya paused long enough to glance back, just once. The chamber sat still, breathless, frozen in the dim light. Yet she felt watched, not by a person, by the vault itself, as if the place had a memory, and she had just etched herself into it. Upstairs, the house greeted them with stale air and faint sunlight filtering through the dust-choked windows. Paul locked the basement door behind them, though they both knew locks meant nothing now. Maya leaned against the wall, fighting the tremble in her hands. Paul let out a shaky breath. We should call someone, the police, the county, hell, the FBI. No. Her voice came out sharp, instinctive, almost panicked. He stared at her. Maya, no. She shook her head. If we call anyone, the money's gone, the vault disappears, and she swallowed, will disappear with it. The words felt terrifyingly true. Paul sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Then, what do you want to do? She sank onto the ruined sofa, burying her face in her hands. Every memory of her struggles weighed down on her at once. Late rent, overdue bills, the tired eyes of her daughter pretending not to notice the emptiness of their fridge. That gold could save them, save everything. Maya, Paul said softly, kneeling beside her, I get it. I do. But we're dealing with people who erase records, people who hide vaults under houses, people who don't leave footprints unless they want to. She looked up at him. You think they'll come after us? I think. He hesitated. I think they already are. A cold wave washed over her. What do you mean? He nodded toward the window. When we were driving here, that same dark SUV passed us again, slow, watching, same one from yesterday. Her chest constricted, fear curling deep inside her. They followed us, and they're waiting, Paul whispered, watching to see what we do next. Maya pressed her palm to her forehead, fighting the urge to scream. All her life she had wished for a any chance, to escape the weight of her circumstances. But this wasn't escape. It was a trap, a glittering, goal-lined trap. The house groaned, settling under the wind. A faint echo drifted through the old pipes, but Maya recognized the sound not as plumbing, but as memory, the groan of that vault door opening. She felt sick. Paul stood, pacing the room. We need to figure out our next move, carefully. But before he could say more, Maya's phone buzzed. She reached into her pocket, expecting a notification from the school or a bank alert. Instead, her stomach dropped when she saw the screen, her daughter's name, 3 missed calls, a voicemail. Her hands shook violently. She pressed play. Mama? Mrs. Weller said I could call because I told my friend about the new house you bought, and about the basement, and the old metal door, and how you said it was weird. Maya's blood froze. Her daughter continued, voice small and unaware of the danger. He told his dad because he likes mysteries, and now his dad wants to come see the house. He said he might drop by today. Is that okay? Maya's breath left her in a single, shattering exhale. Paul's face paled. Maya. She stared at the phone, fear hollowing out her chest until she could barely breathe. They know. She whispered, more people know. Paul stepped closer. We'll figure it out. But she was already trembling. Because this wasn't just about wealth anymore. It wasn't just curiosity. It wasn't just danger lurking in the dark. Rumors had begun, and rumors spread like wildfire. The vault had been discovered, and now the wrong ears were listening. As the house settled around them, Maya felt the weight of that truth press into her ribs like a bruise. The gold could save her life or destroy it, and the storm she had stepped into was only beginning to rise. Maya couldn't hear anything except the echo of her daughter's small, innocent voice repeating the words that now threatened to swallow her whole. He told his dad he might drop by today. It rang through her skull like a warning bell, each repetition louder and colder than the last. Paul stepped toward her carefully, like someone approaching the edge of a cracked ledge. Maya, look at me. She did, but only barely. Her eyes were glassy, distant, caught somewhere between terror and disbelief. We don't know if he's connected to the people following us, Paul said gently. It could be nothing. It's not nothing. Her voice trembled with a certainty she didn't want. Rumors don't stay small, not here, not in a rural town with nothing else to talk about. She swallowed as her breath shook. I thought the danger was underground, but it's not, Paul. It's everywhere now. The room seemed to tilt under her feet, the walls leaning inward as though the house itself knew what she had unleashed. For a moment all she could do was press a trembling hand against her forehead, trying to keep her thoughts from unraveling. Paul sat across from her, elbows on his knees. Okay, first things first. Your daughter is safe, she's at school. She doesn't know anything dangerous, we can control this. Maya shook her head. No, we can't, not anymore. That father, what if he's just curious? What if he's harmless? But what if? Her breath cracked. What if the men in the SUV heard something? What if they started asking their own questions? What if they talked to the wrong person? She felt the walls closing in on her, slow and suffocating. Then a sudden knock rattled the front door, not gentle, not hesitant, a sharp, assertive knock. Maya jolted upright. Paul's hand instinctively gripped the crowbar. The knock came again. 3 hard raps that carried through the frame, echoing into the hallway like a threat. Maya's voice dropped to a whisper. Paul, what if that's him? He didn't answer. He only stepped quietly toward the door, feet silent on the warped floorboards. Maya followed behind him, her heart pounding fast enough to blur her vision. Paul approached the peephole slowly. Maya watched his expression shift, from confusion to caution to something darker. He pulled away from the peephole, jaw tightening. It's not the kid's dad, he murmured, her breath hitched. Then Paul motioned her back with a whisper, stay quiet. But the person outside wasn't patient. The knock came again, louder, more demanding, the kind of knock that didn't ask for entry. It claimed it. Maya's stomach twisted. She stepped backward, her shoulder hitting the wall. Fear pulsed through her veins like electricity. Paul whispered, they know someone's here. Maya swallowed, barely able to speak. Do they look like the men from the SUV? Not sure. He whispered back, though his voice held no reassurance. but this isn't someone stopping by to borrow sugar. The house stayed still, everything holding its breath. Then silence, utter silence. Paul stared at the door, waiting for the next knock, the next threat, the next sign. 5 seconds, 10, 15, nothing. Paul stepped toward the peephole again. Slowly, cautiously, he leaned in and exhaled sharply. They're gone. Gone, Maya whispered, barely trusting the word. Yeah, just disappeared. She stepped closer to him, peering through the peephole. The front porch was empty.